All right, Shalom Makim, all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, divine honors to my apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and peace and blessing to you brothers out there doing the work in truth and sincerity. All right, it's the brother Kanak. And I've been wanting to do this video, so I finally got around to it, and it just sparked the interest, during my studies, because you had this dude come up weeks back, I believe it was the Swedish, and now the Swedish, they pride themselves of being a so-called racial neutral country, meaning they abhor racism. It's unacceptable, and they pride themselves of not having their hand in the slave trade. All right, unlike America, the British, the Dutch, which a lot of them people were unlearned, and they know that the Swedish, they actually had their hand in a so-called transatlantic slave trade. They just didn't play a super big part. All right, they weren't one of those big role players, but they did have their hand in the so-called, what they call the African slave trade. All right, which those were Israelites. All right, so I'm gonna go through a couple of these articles. I'm gonna hop around, just bear with me, and I'm gonna prove to you that these other European nations, all these European nations, had a hand in the slave trade of the Israelites. All right, and the history goes deep. I mean, we can go hours and hours. All right, proving that all these other nations, these Edomite nations, had their hand in the slave trade between the so-called Israelites. I'm sorry, the Israelites, which is the Black, Hispanic, and Native Americans, which primarily it was which were you Jakes on the west coast of Africa. All right, so let me just hop around and prove to you that the so-called Swedish, as you know today, they're part of the slave trade. And then if the spirit is willing, I'm gonna go through all these different European nations, proving, all right, in different segments, proving that they were part of the slave trade. All right, so none of these Edomites are going to have can have an excuse. All right, because the excuse is, oh, we didn't have any part of the slave trade. It was the Americans. The so-called Americans, they had a big part of it, but that's the, in the grand scheme of things, you guys are all Edomites. All right, and all you nations had a hand in taking down our people. All right, primarily on the west coast of Africa, and then setting up different territories in the West Indies, different territories on the west coast of Africa. Okay, and then primarily here in America, where the bulk of the slaves were sent. All right, so this is an article on Wikipedia. It says the Swedish slave trade. All right, so let me jump down here to the trading. It says trading stations in Africa. In 1650, all right, this is when the so-called Swedes start getting their hand into the slave trade. All right, the so-called African slave trade. All right, the bulk of the slaves were sent over here to the Americas around 1620. So about 30 years later, all right, the Swedes start getting their hand into the slave trade. In 1650, Swedish established trading stations along the West African coast. Now, why does it say the West African coast? All right, because that's primarily where our people were at. All right, and they were escaping the onslaught from 70 AD, the onslaught of Jerusalem, by Titus Vespasian, when they conquered Jerusalem. All right, so our people, they fled primarily into the west coast of Africa. They were on both coasts. They were all throughout Africa, but primarily our people were on the west coast of Africa, with bases in an area called the Swedish Gold Coast. All right, you got the Swedish Gold Coast, which is going to go into where the Swedish Gold Coast was at. All right, it says which was later a part of the West African Gold Coast, and which is part of Ghana. All right, so Ghana was the Swedes occupied Ghana. All right, they had a slave port out there in Ghana. All right, that's where the Swedes had slaves, which is going to go into the Danish. All right, they went and they took that over. All right, so the Swedes didn't have that much of a stronghold there, but they got it back. All right. Sweden and Denmark were competing for positions as regional powers during this period, and the Danes followed the Swedes to Africa, setting up stations a couple of years later. So all these different European nations, the Swedes, the Danish, the British, the French, all right, the Portuguese, they all got their hand, all right, in the transatlantic slave trade. All right, some were big players, some were smaller players. All right, the Swedish Gold Coast was taken over by the Danish colonial power, and became part of the Danish Gold Coast. So you had fighting amongst these different European nations to get their stronghold in Africa. All right, because this was the next big so-called gold rush, right? Was slavery. Was how can we get our hands in Africa to get these Israelites and put them in slavery? All right, because we're gonna make a whole bunch of money. There is no historical documentation that shows that slaves were ever traded in the trading stations during the 13-year Swedish possession. Rather, it is assumed to be a case, which was the so-called white man's the devil, which they were. They didn't have a lot of slaves, but what they did have is the Swedes, they were mining iron, all right, to build these different ships, all right, and they were sending that to and they were trading amongst the British, all right. So they didn't have a lot of slaves, which is going to go into it. They didn't have a lot of slaves, but they were part of the slave trade by trading that iron ore to the British, all right. When you go into the history, all right. So let me go into this article over here. So I'm still in on Wikipedia. It says Swedish overseas colonies. All right, because the Swedish, they had colonies over there in the West Indies. All right, Saint Bartholomew. All right, that was the island that they were sending their so-called slaves to. All right, what they had their slaves farming cotton and sugarcane. All right. This is all from the so-called the Swedes. All right, that pride themselves in not being part of the so-called transatlantic slave trade, and they also were had their hand in tobacco. All right. So this is Africa, right? It says Sweden temporarily controlled several settlements on the Gold Coast, present Ghana, but lost that when on the 20th April 1663. All right, that goes into when they've been seized by Denmark. All right, so let me go right here. The Atlantic slave trade during this time, the small Swedish slave trade began, right? It was a small slave trade because the Swedes, they weren't a big power, all right? They weren't a big power during then. So, of course, these other European nations, they were fragmented. They weren't together, all right? But they were still part of that same power structure, all right? Let me keep going. It would later be rejuvenated in 1784 when Sweden's monarch Gustav III began negotiations with France in a view to creating a new alliance between the two countries. All right, so they were linking up with the French. Gustav offered Gothenburg as an entrepot to France in exchange for the Caribbean colony of Saint Bartholomew, all right, in addition to subsidies. Although Sweden was successfully in acquiring the island in 1784, the population of the colony was less than 1,000 people, all right, less than 1,000 slaves, all right, and the slave owners, and neither were particularly propitious trading ports. Sugar and cotton only provided 4 shiploads a year, so it wasn't a big trading port, all right? And many of the other resources were only produced in large quantities to provide subsistence for the inhabitants. All right. So, like I said earlier, the Swedes, they didn't have a big part. They didn't have a big part in the transatlantic slave trade, but they did have their hands in the transatlantic slave trade. All right. They occupied and took over that island, St. Bartholomew. All right. And they had slaves from the west coast of Africa, Ghana. All right. And they were sending them over to that island. And then they were linking up with the French. They were linking up with the British. All right. Doing trade. All right. So let me come over here. Swedish African Company. All right. So you had the Swedish African Company. You have the Swedish East Indian Company. All right. These were all companies established on the backs of slavery. All right. These were all companies established on the back of slavery. And you Swedes, which they pride themselves in not being part of slavery. But then why was slavery abolished in the 1800s? I want to say around 1830 to 1850. All right. The Swedish abolished slavery. And this is around the same time that all these different European nations start abolishing slavery. All right, just like America. All right, which slavery was never abolished. It's just another form of slavery. All right, so you Swedes, all right, you had your hand, all right, in the capture of our people, and you had your hand in the slave trade. If not directly, all right, indirectly, all right, with the trade between these different nations, all right, which you did own slaves also, but you weren't a large power, all right, you weren't a large slave power, okay, but you traded amongst these different European nations, and you had your hand in slavery, all right. King Gustav III, all right, he tried to bring back the Swedish as a power, and he implemented more slavery and put more hell on Jake, all right, which is Jacob, the Israelites. And this goes into the same thing when you go into you can look up the Swedish Gold Coast, okay? All right. Let me this is an article, all right? It's called Living in Denial, Sweden and the Slave Trade. All right. So Sweden is a country which is neutral, open-minded, and anti-racist, like I was saying earlier. All right, it's pretty much illegal to be racist in Sweden. All right, but that's just smoke and mirrors, at least in its self-image. All right, and I'm gonna skip all this and I'm gonna come down because this is a white woman. All right, well, she actually could be a Jake. All right, because you have Jakes out there in Sweden. All right, Sweden was occupied by Jakes. All right, in the Dark Ages, so-called Dark Ages. All right, the Byzantine Empire. All right, you have a lot of coat of arms. All right, my so-called slave name, it goes back to Swedish origin. All right, goes back to Swedish origin because you had Jake all up in those lands. But during that time, the 1300s is when Jake started falling from all those different strongholds in Europe. All right. So during the mid 1300s, that's when all these different Israelite strongholds, all right, during the Dark Ages will start getting taken down. And as they got taken down, all right, in the 1600s, early to mid 1600s, that's when these other European nations, right, that occupied these lands after they took us down, that's when the slavery started. So those different lands that we were in, we start getting put into slavery. We start getting pushed out and put into slavery. All right. So let me see where. Okay, I'm gonna read this. When I was 12, when I read information provided at Cape Coast Castle, after a second, my stomach ached and I read it over. again to make sure I was not imagining it. Overall, the sign said that the Swedes built Cape Coast Castle. The Sweden colonized a part of which is today present-day Ghana. All right, so the Swedes, they were in Ghana, all right, which later the Danish came up in there, and then the French came in there, all right. And the Sweden was once a main provider of iron during the transatlantic slave trade. All right, so indirectly, they were trading amongst the different European nations, providing iron, all right, for the different ships, and also the shackles, man, the shackles and the bonds they were putting upon us. All right, that was because of the Swedes. All right, they were mining that iron. All right, and where were they mining that iron from? All right, Ghana, the west coast of Africa. All right, and they were trading amongst the different nations. All right, the different European nations for the shackles. All right, the shackles that they put our people in and sent us off to the West Indies, sent us off to Brazil, the different Latin American countries. All right, and primarily, all right, America. All right, North America. Let me read that again. The Sweden colonized a part of which is today present-day Ghana, which is on the west coast of Africa, and that Sweden was one of the main providers of iron during the transatlantic slave trade. Okay? Give me a second. All right. So this is what the Swedish were doing. All right. They were providing shackles for our people. All right. You so-called Negroes. All right. This is what the Swedes were providing. All right. That iron ore. So they can put you so-called Negroes into slavery. All right. Them iron shackles. And I believe that's in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, it goes into that. Hold on. Give me a second. A yoke. Yoke. Yep, right. Yoke of iron. Right? Deuteronomy 28 and 48. So you Swedish, all right, you're going to have to, you're Edomites, you're going to have to pay for this. This is Deuteronomy 28 and 48. Therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies, which the Lord, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he has destroyed thee. All right, let me go back into the article. All right, proving that you damn Swedish, you Edomites, you got to go in, you're going to go into slavery, all right? And you had a hand in taking our people down. All right? The Sweden colonized a part of which is today present-day Ghana. And that the Sweden was one of the main providers of iron during the transatlantic slave trade. All right, what's this? What's this, man? All right. You damn Swedes, all right? You damn Swedish are providing iron ore to put our people into slavery, all right? Look at this. This is what the Swedish were doing, all right? All right, that iron ore that they were mining, all right, putting Jake into slavery. You're gonna have to pay for that, all right? Try to pride yourself in not being part of the transatlantic slave trade. That's a goddamn lie, all right? It's a goddamn lie. Let me get to the scripture. All right. So we're not ignorant of Satan devices. All right. This is 2 Corinthians 10:4. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through the Most High to the pulling down of strongholds. And those strongholds, all right, are the so-called white man's, Esau, the Edomites, their lies. All right, here it is. It's been so much lies that have been pushed forth throughout the whole planet Earth during the so-called white man's rule. Oh, we didn't have anything to do with slavery. We weren't part of that. Well, now the information is out, man. All right, in our weapon, this is our weapon is information, the truth. That's our weapon. All right, your weapon is lies. All right, like this article. All right, this is a so-called Swedish woman, which she could be an Israelite foreigner. All right, if she's not, she's going into slavery, living in denial because what? Their whole life they have been told. All right, that the Swedes are so-called anti-racist. They're open-minded. All right, because you got a lot of Jakes living out there in Sweden. All right, I want to say they got like 2% in the population, 2 to 3% in the population. A lot of Jakes over there in Sweden. All right, and it's a lot of them from the west coast of Africa. Why is that? All right, because you people you goddamn devils had your hand in the slavery. All right, all you goddamn devils, man, all you European nations. All right, because you're all part of the Roman Empire. All right, you're all part of the Roman Empire that was broken back up. All right, the EU. All right, NATO. All right, that beast. So just like America's gonna go down, all right, that beast is going to be destroyed, which is the so-called white man's power structure. All right, living in denial, man. So our weapons of warfare, they're not carnal. We're not taking up arms, trying to bring you Edomites down. All right, that's impossible. All right, because your gift, all right, that was given to you by Yahweh Shema Shai was a sword, meaning weapons, meaning weapon technology. The Most High gave you that weapon technology. All right. And a time to spread forth your lies throughout the whole planet Earth. But now, since your kingdom is going down, the information is out. All right, we're bringing down America. Yahweh Shema Shai is bringing down America through the lies, through the truth. Are casting down all these strongholds, all these lies that have the people blinded. All right, verse 5: casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of Yahweh Shema Shai. All right, and bring it into captivity every thought to the obedience of Yahweh Shai. So all these different things, all these different lies that the so-called white man has pushed forth, okay? All these different lies that the so-called white man puts in his media are just being cast down by the true men of Yahweh Shema Shai. All right, all the cat is out of the box, so to speak. The rabbit is out of the hat. All right. You can no longer lie to the whole world. All right, because we're gonna see it, and we're gonna see it as a lie, and we're gonna go into the scriptures, and we're gonna go into the history and prove that what you are saying is a goddamn lie, man. All right, it's right here, man. Our weapons are not carnal, man. Okay, we're in war right now. We're in war with you goddamn devils. All right, and it's a war of truth. All right, because this is not a war of weapons. All right, of physical weapons. All right, I'm gonna show you. Let me go back to the blue letter and Ephesians, the 6th chapter, man. Ephesians 6 and 9. Hold on. Let me go over here. Yeah, Ephesians 6 and 11. I'll stand in 6 and 11. But put on the whole armor of the Most High, Yahweh Shema Shai, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil, the tricks, man, the tricks, the lies, the deceit of the devil, man. We got this armor on, man, which is this truth. All right, the truth of the scriptures. All right, and the truth of the scriptures, it gives us the knowledge and understanding to go through all these different events and filter out all the lies, all right, through the spirit of Yahweh Shema Shai, because there's a lot of disinformation out there. But through the spirit of Yahweh Shema Shai, the Lord has given us, all right, the spirit of discernment, all right, to pick the meat off the bone, so to speak, all right, and expose you damn devils, man, expose you damn Swedish. All right, because you got different of these European nations that come over to America, and they might come into the camp. Oh, I didn't have any hand in a slave trade. That's a goddamn lie, man. All you nations had your hand in the slave trade. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. All right, and all these lies, all right, is spiritual wickedness in high places, all right, because who's the in the forefront of all these lies? All right, it's the elites, all right, and you low-level Edomites of a low stock, you hold on to it, all right, and you pretty much push forth the agenda of the elites, all right, because you're in one elite with the elites. I'm gonna read a little bit more and I'm gonna close it up, all right, which you know, you can go into the history more. I'm not gonna go too in depth in it because it's very vast. It's very vast. Or you can go ahead and search the Swedish transatlantic slave trade, or you can search the Swedish Gold Coast. All right, the Swedish East India Company. All right. It says, I questioned the facts and asked the tour guide, as this was information I have not read about at school, and he confirmed what I was dreading. Every step I took in the slave fort and every shackle I saw, I started to think of why this information had been withheld from me in Sweden. That's right. Because the information is it's a weapon, all right? And for Esau to keep continuing his kingdom, he has to spread forth more lies and more lies and more lies. But now that this information is coming out, all right, his weapon of lies can no longer be used. And that's why you're starting to see simultaneously all these white nations, these European nations, these Edomite nations are starting to be exposed. Are starting to be exposed, and the truth is starting to come out. All right? To sum it up, all right, the Swedish, they had their hand in a transatlantic slave trade, all right, going into the 1650s, all right. They had a small part in it, but they did have slaves, all right. They were trading off the west coast of Africa, all right. All right, the Swedish Gold Coast, which they held occupation in Ghana, all right. They have slaves that go and then they occupy the island of St. Bartholomew, all right, in the West Indies, all right. And they had the slaves gathering cotton and sugarcane. Also, they had a hand in the mining of the iron ore that was created for the shackles in different parts of the ships. All right, so you actually had a big part of slavery, all right? You damn Swedish. And you're going to go into slavery. So I'm going to prove that, all right? And then I'm going to wrap it up. Revelation 13:10, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Oh, okay. And also, those Swedish, when they had our people in slavery, man, they had dungeons. All right, when you go into the history, they had dungeons. They were raping our women, and they were heavy into torture. All right, they were heavy into torture, so much so that the Swedish government in these different colonies, they had to put different laws in place that they couldn't torture the slaves to a certain extent, man, because you Swedish, you guys were getting busy, man. You were getting busy torturing our people, all right, down in them islands, man. Them islands that you occupied down in the West Indies, all right, them colonies that you had our people from the west coast of Africa go to, or you were raping the women, or you had all type of different torture devices. Go into history, man. Say that I'm a liar. Say I'm a liar. All right, the truth is coming out on you goddamn devils, man. All right, that's why the scriptures say, he that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. All right, so them same torture devices that you were putting upon our people, all right, you had our women in them dungeons, all right, as sex slaves. All right, we're going to do the same thing to your women, all right? We're going to do double unto you. All right, all you goddamn Edomites, all right? Because it doesn't matter if you call yourself Swedes. It doesn't matter if you call yourself the French, the British, or the Portuguese. You're all Edomites. Here's the patience and the faith of the saints. And the Israelites, all right? The Israelites are the saints. All right, and we're going to have patience and we have faith that Yahweh Bashem Shai, that's who the world doesn't know. That's God and his son, all right, who the world ignorant called Jesus Christ. His name is Yahweh Shai, and the Most High's name is Yahweh, and he's going to give us that patience, and he's giving us that faith to wait for the redemption of his people, all right, and part of that redemption is to put you people into captivity, you Swedish into captivity, all right, and to kill you with the sword, all right. We're going to torture you. We're going to rape your women, all right. This is all in the kingdom of heaven, all right. Why? Because you did it unto us. And the Most High, he's just. He's just. All right. Whatever goes around comes around. All right. You people like to pride yourself on karma, believing in karma. Well, that karma is going to come back to you. That's a principle right out of the Bible. All right. So with that, I want to give all praise again to Yahweh Shema Shai, double honors to my apostles and elders, a great millstone. Peace and blessings to you brothers out there, and you Swedish, get ready for captivity. All right, shalom.